In some universes, time is experienced as a plane. Beings move around their existence as an intimate landscape, treading and retreading every possibility, learning their lives as a gardener learns her land, choosing every choice, exploring every opening, until, through preference, a rut is worn in the familiar, a dwelling in just one favourite moment, a resting place from their endless wanderings.
How do I turn it off, David? Right off.
No, George, that would be a mistake.
Yeah, well, we're all human, David. That's what we do. Make mistakes. Now, how do I kill it?
No, George, you can't. You see? It's adaptable. It learns. It wants to survive. Why wouldn't it? Everything does.
This thing, it told me itself out there. It's not just events, figures it can recreate. Somehow, it's thoughts too. Memories, pictures in the head.
I don't know if you've read any of the evidence suggesting that telepathy is somehow independent of time. I know that it is. Omega doesn't belong to our age. He's somewhere in the future, immensely far ahead of us. For a while, I thought he must be one of the last men. That's why I gave him his name. But now I'm not sure. Perhaps he belongs to an age when there are a myriad different races of man, scattered all over the universe. His people, wherever and whenever they may be, have reached the heights and fallen from them into the depths the beasts can never know. There's a sense of evil about him, Jack. The real evil that most of us never meet in all our lives. Yet sometimes I feel almost sorry for him, because I know what has made him the thing he is. Have you ever wondered, Jack, what the human race will do when science has discovered everything, when there are no more worlds to be explored, when all the stars have given up their secrets? Omega is one of the answers. I hope he's not the only one. Or if so, everything we've striven for is in vain. They have pampered their bodies until they are useless, and too late they have discovered their mistake. Perhaps they have thought, as some men have, that they could live by intellect alone, and perhaps they are immortal. And that must be their real damnation. Through the ages, their minds have been corroding in their feeble bodies, seeking some release from their intolerable boredom. They have found it, at last, in the only way they can, by sending back their minds to an earlier, more virile age, and becoming parasites on the emotions of others. I wonder how many of them there are.
There is the self we think we are, the self that attempts to deal with the outside world of reality. This self I call the ego. But ego is never the master of self, for we are constantly bedeviled by powerful unconscious forces in our beings. Before ego developed in us, there was id. Id. Id is all that is primitive and infantile within us.
Will you look at that? It's a moving mountain. It's coming closer to them.
Don't let them see your concern, Digby. These green-faced so-and-sos will love that.
Love, Colonel? Love? It is something we do not understand. We have spent generations without feeling. We are scientists. Feelings like fear and love and hate we do not understand. That is why we want you to watch your friends. They are going to die. We will observe you as you watch them on the screen. Is it pity that we are registering on your thought patterns, or fear?
This thing killed my child. Her and all those others. For what? For what, you murdering? For what? If its own words are to be believed, then it's a scientist. This is its way of understanding us. What kind of understanding does it get from destroying everything? I don't know. It's trying, I suppose, to understand us as a species, which means not worrying about us as individuals. It's our turn to lie on the dissecting table of a bigger, meaner animal.
I can only tell you what has become, I'm afraid, more traditional knowledge. Our wise men studied deeply into the properties of light. They learned that light has a definite effect upon solid matter, and they believed, because of that effect, that stone and metal and crystalline things retain a memory of all that they have seen. Why this should be, I do not know.
He was very, very tall and very thin.
What we could see of him, he had a sort of robe, you know, like a monk, and we couldn't see his face.
And he smelled disgusting.
Like old drains. And then, although he didn't speak, we sort of heard him tell us what to do.
Grimnir.
Grimnir, who else? You're to be my ruin after all.
Who is Grimnir?
He is, or was, a man. One who in his lust for knowledge practiced the forbidden arts. But the black magic ravaged his heart and made a monster of him. He left the paths of day and went to live beneath the waters of Hlynthi, the Black Lake, growing mighty in evil, second only to the ancient creatures of the night that attend their lord in Ragnarok.
Aye, and no one in memory has seen his face nor heard his true voice.
They claim their labors are to build a heaven, yet their heaven is populated with horrors. Perhaps the world is not made. Perhaps nothing is made. A clock without a craftsman. It's too late. Always has been. Always will be. Too late.
You can't send mass back through time. Wormhole theory disallows it. You can't open a rift through time big enough to take an atom back a split second. The amount of energy to do that simply doesn't exist in the universe. So Marcus must have worked out how to send raw information instead, something that has zero mass. Do you see? He sent his own mind. All his memories, all his knowledge packaged up and delivered to his earlier self. No wonder his confidence was off the scale.
Because if we mean anything as human beings, then at some level we must be able to recognize what is true.
Can you imagine a room without walls? He's in a kind of hollow, egg-shaped space. There's no entrance or exit and no gravity, unless he's learned to defy it, because he floats in the centre. And around him is a circle of short, fluted cylinders, turning slowly in the air. I think they must be machines of some kind, obeying his will. And once there was a large oval hanging beside him, with perfectly formed arms coming from it. It could only have been a robot, yet those hands and fingers seemed alive. They were feeding and massaging him, treating him like a baby. Oh, it was horrible. He's like a nightmare travesty of mankind, with huge, malevolent eyes. And this is strange. It's not the way one had imagined evolution going. He's covered with a fine layer of fur, as blue as the room in which he lives. Every time I've seen him, he's been in the same position, half curled up like a sleeping baby. I think his legs have completely atrophied. Perhaps his arms as well. Only his brain is still active, hunting up and down the ages for its prey. And now you know. On very rare occasions, and by the release of an enormous amount of energy, it is possible to produce a singularity in time. During the fraction of a second when that singularity occurs, the past becomes accessible to the future, though only in a restricted way. We can send our minds back to you, but not our bodies. You mean, said Ashton, That you are borrowing the body I see.
Breathtaking, isn't it? Sheer audacity.
What worries me is that when you stop breathing, you die.
Hey. Yeah, that's over the top. Red flag in front of the train. We're human. We can do it and we must do it. And if ever we stop, then I think we stop being human.
Mm. What about the people who say, what about God? Where is he in all this, John?
Well, this afternoon, talking to Brandt, I called it a Tower of Babel. I also said I'd leave the dreams to him and stick with the numbers. And if God's anywhere, Kate, then he's in the numbers. And he's as bound by the rules as anyone else in this universe.